According to Youth Mental Health Canada in 2018, mental illness is the #1 illness affecting people in the industrialized world. In Canada, only 6% of the healthcare budget is spent on mental health, much lower than the estimated 30% of funding needed to represent the actual number of individuals living with mental health challenges and disorders. This can be relational to the fact that in Canada, 1 in 5 children who require health interventions will actually receive them. Conversations of stigma and discrimination should be opened up to include mental health as a social issue. Equality means giving people the same thing regardless of if it meets their needs or creates more barriers than what existed before. Equity is more relatable to what people need. For example, individuals being given different sized boxes to stand on with one person given no boxes at all because it is not needed. The final image shows that what is often identified as our current reality, where one individual is given more than what they truly need when they may have not needed anything at all. One individual may be provided with support that meets their need for the current situation, and another individual can be provided with nothing that meets their need or have circumstances removed that worsen their challenges and experiences. Some groups in particular face more discrimination and stigma or require stronger access to services and support. These include immigrants and refugees, Black and racialized individuals, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and two-spirited communities, people with differing abilities, and those living in the North or in remote communities and identify as Indigenous, First Nations, Inuit, or Métis. A mental health challenge is most easily understood as negative signs and symptoms outside of normal or common behaviors. This includes decreased control of thoughts, feelings, or emotions, potentially harmful to oneself or others, abnormal or maladaptive behaviors. Experiencing mental health challenges may warrant interventions. A mental health disorder is mostly experienced when challenges disrupt a person's ability to carry out their usual activities and relationships. A formal mental health disorder is diagnosed within the DSM-5. Mental health disorders can include depression, including suicide, bipolar disorder, anxiety, trauma-related disorders, and psychotic disorders. Ecology refers to relationships between people and things. Often when speaking about an individual's ecology, we are referring to the patterns and balance within interactions. Youth workers can have varying degrees of assessment processes to determine risk and protective factors of those we support. Although frontline youth workers are not mental health professionals and must not attempt mental health treatment, it can be important to gather risk and protective factors. One method of gathering risk and protective factors is to use psycho-social spiritual models to determine areas of intervention and support. This model can focus on health and wellness. Biological. Physical health and genetic disorders, challenges, or symptomology can be explored here. When thinking about this, identify things the individual essentially cannot change about themselves. For example, things that were given or passed down to them. Intergenerational trauma can have both spiritual and biological components to it. Psychological. Signs and symptomology of mental health challenges and wellness. What areas experience challenges? For example, no sleeping, feeling sad, and negative thoughts. What areas experience wellness? For example, no thoughts of suicide, identifies enjoyment in some activities and people. Understanding the history of psychological challenges and wellness is also a critical component to this model. Social. From a community perspective, the social level of assessment is a critical component. It allows us to examine strong and challenged relationships within a young person's system. It identifies specific people as supportive, helpful, and on the other end, rejiggering, dangerous, and disconnected. Groups of people can include peers, professionals like school staff, social workers, program leaders and coaches, adult allies like neighbors, parents of peers, and family, biological and chosen. Historical and current relationships with family members is often a key element to any assessment and intervention plan. Spiritual. Religious and spiritual beliefs and connections that are mostly deemed as protective factors. A lack of spiritual or religious connection is not identified as an immediate risk factor. However, radicalized or disclosed negativity towards religious involvement or individuals could be identified as a risk factor. Completing an assessment through this model will help you understand what other professionals might be helpful to connect the young person with in order to address their mental health challenges. Oftentimes, many different professionals are involved in supportive interventions with young people and their mental health, and youth workers are often the connectors with young people and subject-specific professionals. Some youth workers and most mental health professionals use clinical interventions to support the mental health needs of youth. Although this section of the video is not intended to train you on the following therapeutic interventions, it is designed to help you understand the approaches of different therapeutic interventions that may be used and connect you further to the skills that you are most comfortable with. We will briefly review the following interventions: cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, anti-oppressive practice, peer support, narrative therapy, and crisis intervention. Cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on the way we think, feel, and behave. Commonly used to treat anxiety, depression, and trauma-related disorders, individuals engage with clients on an ongoing basis and work toward better understanding, challenging, and changing negative thought patterns. CBT is a solutions-focused therapy that encourages participants to deploy strategies to improve thought patterns to boost happiness. Trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on resolving emotional and behavioral challenges related to single, multiple, and complex trauma experiences. Therapy is often shorter term, and individuals focus on abilities to better process emotions and thoughts related to traumatic events. Trauma-focused CBT is highly solutions-focused, supporting with strategies to relieve the negative thought processes that often lead to anxiety, stress, and depression, and supports in creating healthier strategies. Anti-oppressive practice is rooted in the social work profession. The primary focus of AOP is ending socioeconomic oppression. This perspective identifies and names the oppression experienced by individuals and groups and shows the interconnections between oppression, trauma, and marginalization. Power and control are definitive aspects of AOP, with interventionists, advocates, and allies looking to equalize the power imbalances experienced in society. Feminist theory and anti-Black racism fall within the AOP framework. While peer support is not a formal clinical practice, peer support is a highly recognized intervention that heavily relies on the lived experience of the service provider. Service provider-client relationships are grounded in the common experiences between individuals and the formal and informal learnings of the service provider. Peer support programs are very helpful in increasing social and personal connections amongst individuals who may have a history of isolation and loneliness due to their challenging experiences. Narrative therapy is highly client-focused that sees individuals as separate from the challenges they experience. Narrative therapy allows individuals to rewrite their own stories by creating opportunities that challenge how they perceive themselves and their problems. The usage of language is a key determinant to successful narrative practices. Service providers who utilize a narrative approach are keen on identifying alternative stories or solutions to challenges and are capable of prompting, through questioning, individuals to tell different variations of certain problems or challenges they experience. Crisis intervention is the rapid assessment of a client problem or environmental situation that is generally identified as potentially harmful, and the deployment of instructions and/or resources is the hope of restoring a sense of normalcy. Such interventions must take into consideration the individuals primarily influenced by the situation and all stakeholders. Service providers who engage in sound crisis intervention methods most often are not emotionally based reactors and remain calm and rational in what can be very troubling and dangerous situations. In conclusion, youth workers are important connectors when it comes to youth mental health. They are often the trusted, safe, and caring adult who has a relationship with the young person that allows them to learn about varying needs that they may have through a holistic assessment, including their mental health needs. Having a basic understanding of different mental health challenges and disorders, an understanding of existing resources, as well as the ability to work in partnership with mental health agencies and professionals can support early intervention for a young person's mental health.